There was once a man who could not sleep, not because of noise, not because of fear, but because he was thinking. He was thinking of a conversation he had earlier that day, a small disagreement with a friend. His friend had said something about the world, about right and wrong, about justice, and he had disagreed. But now, lying alone in the dark, he kept replaying that conversation in his head, not to understand his friend's point of view, but to prove again and again that he was right. He argued with the silence. He imagined the perfect response. He rehearsed it like a script, line by line, sharpening the truth like a weapon. And still sleep didn't come, because in his heart something wasn't settled. Not the disagreement, but the need to win it. The need to be right. We've all known this feeling in some form, the tension that comes when someone challenges what we believe to be true. It could be an opinion, a memory, by memory, a moral stance. We cling to it like a raft in rough waters, convinced that if we let go, we will drown in uncertainty. But what if it's the clinging that's drowning us? In Buddhist teaching, there is a concept called updana, which means clinging or attachment. And one of the subtlest forms of attachment is our grasping at certainty. The mind wants things to be clear, black and white. It wants a clear villain, a clear hero, a clear answer. It resists the gray, the unknown, the in-between. But life, as the Buddha saw so clearly, is rarely so simple. People are not all good or all bad. Situations shift. Perspectives differ. And what feels true today may feel less certain tomorrow. The need to hold tight to a single version of truth becomes, over time, a prison. A quiet one, decorated with good intentions, but a prison still. You might notice it in your own life in arguments with loved ones, where the goal becomes not connection, but correction. In your workplace, when someone offers a new approach, and your first instinct is to defend the old one. In quiet moments when a doubt arises, and you rush to silence it, afraid of what it might unravel. The truth, ironically, is that healing begins not with finding the final answer, but with letting go of needing one. A monk once told a story of his early training. He was walking through the forest with his teacher, carrying all the books he had studied, feeling proud of the knowledge he had gathered. "Master," he asked, "is what I've learned true?" His teacher stopped, looked gently at him, and said, "It is useful until it is not." At first, the young monk was confused. "But what do you mean?" he asked. "Isn't truth supposed to be eternal?" The teacher smiled. "Only the clinging is eternal. Truth, my dear, is a raft. It helps you cross the river. But once you're across, you must set it down." The man didn't understand then, but years later, after many journeys and many rivers, he finally did. When we begin to see that our truths, however noble, however well-intentioned, are still constructs, then we begin to soften. Not weaken, not surrender, but soften. We become less reactive, more curious. We stop needing every conversation to end in victory. We stop needing every belief to stand unchallenged. We begin to open space for ourselves and for others. This doesn't mean abandoning all values or drifting in confusion. It means recognizing that there is a deeper strength in flexibility than in rigidity. A bamboo bends in the wind, but it does not break. The rigid tree, in contrast, snaps in a storm. When you find yourself feeling the tension rise, your chest tightening, your jaw clenching, pause. Ask yourself, am I seeking truth, or am I defending a truth I've become attached to? Am I listening to understand or only to reply? The path to peace begins with the willingness to not be so sure. You might fear that letting go of certainty will leave you lost, but it is often the first real step toward being found. For when the mind relaxes its grip, the heart begins to speak. And what the heart often says is simple and healing. I don't know, but I am here, and that is enough. There is a kind of wisdom that only arises in uncertainty, not in the chaos of panic, but in the stillness that follows when we stop insisting the world be just as we imagine it. It's the wisdom that comes when a parent stops trying to mold their child into a perfect image and starts seeing who that child really is. Or when we stop needing every decision to be the right one and begin to trust that even missteps can carry meaning. This wisdom cannot be forced. It emerges like a lotus from the mud softly, patiently. In the silence after a heated argument, when we finally breathe and wonder, was being right more important than being kind? In the pause before we hit send on a message we know comes more from pride than peace. In the quiet knowing that sometimes not knowing is the most honest place to be. The Buddha once taught that all suffering comes from attachment, and not just to people or possessions, but to ideas, to identity, to being right. He invited his followers not to accept truths blindly, but to test them, to live them, and when those truths no longer brought peace, to release them. Imagine how different our lives might feel if we saw our beliefs not as shields to protect us, but as windows to grow through. Not weapons, but tools meant to be used wisely and let go when they've served their purpose. You don't need to win every debate. You don't need to prove every point. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to smile gently and say, perhaps, to step back and allow space for the other, to remember that your peace is not built on their agreement. A wise person once said, the truth will set you free, but first, it will make you uncomfortable. This is because real truth is not a comfort blanket, it is a mirror. And sometimes it reflects parts of ourselves we're not ready to see. Our stubbornness, our pride, our fear of being wrong. But when we dare to look anyway and still offer ourselves kindness, that is the beginning of transformation. To let go of truth is not to reject wisdom. It is to recognize that wisdom is alive. It grows, it shifts, it expands as we do. What helped you survive once may now be keeping you from living fully. What felt certain yesterday may no longer feel true today. And that's not failure. That's growth. Think of a snake shedding its skin, not because the old skin was bad, but because it no longer fits. Holding on to it would only bring pain. And so it is with the truths we outgrow. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that certainty is strength. But perhaps, in a deeper sense, real strength is being willing to change, to sit in the unknown, to say, I don't know, but I am learning. That is a courageous act. In your quiet moments, notice the truths you grip tightly. Are they bringing you peace or simply protecting your ego? Are they helping you love more or merely justifying your distance? The cage of certainty is not made of facts, it is made of fear. And fear is not a place where wisdom grows. So breathe, loosen your grip, let the world be what it is. Let others believe what they believe. Let yourself be spacious, curious, free. And in that space, healing begins. There is an old parable of a blindfolded group of people touching different parts of an elephant. One feels the trunk and insists the elephant is like a snake. Another touches the leg and says it's clearly like a tree. A third feels the ear and declares it is like a fan. Each one is certain, each one convinced. And each one is, in a way, both right and wrong. This parable, though ancient, reflects something very modern, our tendency to mistake partial truth for the whole. We hold tightly to what we see, what we've experienced, and declare it to be universal. But the Buddha gently reminds us what we perceive is shaped by our conditions, our karma, our past, our pain. What feels true is not always the truth. The illusion of one truth is seductive. It simplifies the world. It makes us feel safe. If I know what's right, I don't have to listen. If I know what's wrong, I don't have to question. But this comfort comes at a cost. It closes the door to dialogue. It shuts down humility, and it hardens the heart. In Buddhist philosophy, the concept of dukkha, often translated as suffering, includes this tight grasping of truth. We suffer when we demand the world to match our fixed ideas of how it should be. When our partner disappoints us because we believe love means always understanding. When a child rebels because we assume good children never talk back. When life shifts and we say, but it wasn't supposed to be this way. We become trapped in a story we wrote about how things should be, and the world, not having read our script, fails to follow along. There is a Zen saying, don't seek the truth. Just stop cherishing opinions. At first, this sounds strange. Shouldn't we seek the truth? But the point is not to abandon discernment. It's to loosen our grasp on the idea that our view is complete, that our story is the only one that matters. Let's say you and someone you care about remember the same event differently. You're sure they're wrong. They're sure you are. You can spend hours arguing, bringing up evidence, trying to win. But even if you do, what have you won? A small victory? At what cost? In moments like this, it's worth asking, is the truth I'm defending helping to deepen this connection, or is it just shielding my pride? The Buddha often used skillful means upkit to teach. He didn't offer one-size-fits-all truths. He spoke differently to different people, depending on their needs, their understanding. Truth, for him, was not a fixed thing. It was alive, responsive, a living bridge, not a dead wall. We might say, but I'm standing up for what's right. And yes, there is courage in that. The world needs people who care about justice. But it also needs people who know that even the most sacred truths must be held with compassion. That righteousness without humility becomes cruelty. The modern world amplifies this illusion of singular truth. Social media encourage black and white thinking. News cycles demand quick takes. Everyone is pushed to declare a side. But in real life, most truths are textured, messy, nuanced. The great Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "When you plant lettuce, if it does not grow well, you don't blame the lettuce. You look for reasons it is not doing well." In other words, we look beyond judgment. We look with tenderness. The same applies to people and to their truths. Instead of asking, who is right, perhaps we can ask, What are they seeing that I'm not? Instead of saying, "You're wrong," we can say, "Help me understand." This is not weakness. This is the courage to let go of certainty and walk toward understanding. Letting go of the illusion of one truth doesn't mean losing your center. It means discovering that your center can be large enough to include others, that you can stand firm and still make room, that you can be rooted but not rigid. Sometimes what we call truth is simply pain in disguise, a story we've told ourselves to make sense of something that hurt. They never cared about me. I always fail. People can't be trusted. These stories feel true, but are they helpful? Are they kind? Are they keeping us safe or keeping us small? Healing begins when we question these truths. When we stop asking, "Is it true?" and start asking, "Is it loving?" Because in the end, the truths that heal are the ones that connect us, not the ones that divide. You may find over time that your truths soften, that what once felt like a line drawn in stone now feels like a shape traced in sand. This is not erosion, it is evolution. And in that softening, you may find a new kind of strength. Not the strength of being right, but the strength of being real. There is a quiet liberation in realizing that we don't have to have it all figured out, that our value is not measured by the sharpness of our opinions, but by the depth of our presence, that listening, truly listening, may be more transformative than any argument we could ever win. You might recall a time when someone truly listened to you, not to correct, not to debate, but just to be with you in your confusion or your pain. In that moment, did you feel small? Or did you feel seen? To offer that kind of presence to others, we must first offer it to ourselves. That means allowing our own truths to unfold gradually, like the morning light. It means being willing to live with questions, to walk with doubt, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. The Buddha often emphasized not knowing as a sacred space. Not knowing doesn't mean ignorance. It means openness. It means stepping into the mystery without panic, trusting that insight arises not from control, but from clarity born of stillness. Think of the moon reflected in water. If the surface is agitated, if we are constantly stirring the waters with judgment, with certainty, with mental noise, the reflection is broken. But when the water becomes still, the moon reveals itself fully. So it is with truth. The mind that insists, "I know," often stops growing. But the mind that humbly whispers, "I wonder," continues to bloom. A spiritual teacher once said, "Truth is like a bird. If you hold it too tightly, you crush it. If you hold it too loosely, it flies away. But if you let it perch upon your open hand, it may choose to stay." Let your truths perch. Let them breathe. Let them change shape as you do. In time, you may find that the truths that once felt like boundaries now feel like bridges, that the certainty you once clung to like armor has softened into understanding, and that the love you withheld, waiting for someone to agree with you, can now flow freely, even in disagreement. Because healing is not about being right, it's about being whole. And to be whole, we must be willing to let go, not just of pain, not just of the past, but of the truths that no longer serve us. So let the old stories fall away. Let the certainty dissolve. Let yourself sit quietly, not knowing, and trust that the truth that truly matters will rise not as a shout, but as a whisper. not as a conclusion, but as a companion. In that space you are not lost. You are free. Imagine a river flowing gently through a valley. It doesn't argue with the rocks. It doesn't resist the bends in its path. It simply moves fluid, steady, alive. There's something deeply wise in that movement. It doesn't grasp. It doesn't demand. It lets go again and again. Most of us were never taught how to let go. We were taught how to hold on to expectations, to roles, to identities. We were taught that strength meant persistence, that love meant possession, that certainty meant control. But if you look closely at your own suffering, you may notice this. Much of it comes not from what is happening, but from your refusal to let it be. Letting go is not the same as giving up. It is not apathy. It is the release of resistance. It is choosing peace over control, acceptance over tension, love over fear. In the teachings of the Buddha, there is a profound image, that of a person crossing a river on a raft. Once the raft has served its purpose, helped them reach the other shore, they are told not to carry it on their back, but to leave it behind. The raft was essential, but once you no longer need it, clinging to it becomes a burden. Our beliefs can be rafts. So can our stories, our habits, even our pain. They may have carried us through hard times, helped us feel safe, given us meaning. But when they become heavy, when they stop serving our peace, they are no longer wisdom. They are weight. Think of the anger you've carried for years. Perhaps it protected you once, gave you fire when you felt voiceless, helped you survive betrayal or injustice. But now maybe it keeps you from trusting, from softening, from resting, or the belief that you always have to be strong, that showing emotion means weakness. Maybe it helped you feel respected, self-contained, in control. But does it allow you to be known, to be comforted, to be human? We must honor the parts of us that learn to hold on, but we must also learn the art of releasing. It is not easy. It is a gentle, often painful process, like opening a clenched fist, finger by finger. And sometimes we don't even know we're holding on until something asks us to let go. Maybe it's a relationship ending, not because of hate, but because growth has taken you both in different directions. Maybe it's a career path that once felt like your calling, now slowly eroding your spirit. Maybe it's a version of yourself you clung to, a role, a reputation, a dream that no longer reflects who you are becoming. In those moments, letting go can feel like death, but it is also a kind of birth. In Buddhist thought, impermanence, anicca, is not just an idea, but a truth that runs through all things. Nothing stays the same. Not joy, not sorrow, not identity, not even truth. And in this constant movement, we are invited not to hold on, but to dance. To let go is to trust the river, to stop building dams in the heart, to say, I do not know where this path leads, but I trust the current to carry me. There's a calm that comes from no longer needing to control the flow, a lightness that returns when you stop dragging what was never yours to carry. Sometimes we think letting go means we'll lose something essential, that without our beliefs, our pain, our roles, we won't know who we are. But the opposite is often true. In release, we return. We return to simplicity, to stillness, to presence, We remember that we are not our stories, not our wounds, not even our wisdom. We are the space beneath it all, the one who watches, the one who breathes, the one who lets go and still remains. Letting go is not a one-time act. It is a way of being, a daily invitation, a sacred practice. You might begin in small ways. Let go of a judgment, a grudge, a need to respond, a need to be understood, and notice the peace that enters, the breath that deepens, the space that opens inside your chest. And from that space, love can arise. Not the tight, anxious love that demands and clings, but the spacious love that sees and accepts, that honors what is without needing to possess it. The river keeps flowing, the sky keeps changing, and you gentle, open, awake can learn to float. Sometimes the most painful truths are the ones we tell ourselves in silence. I'm not enough. It's my fault. I should be better by now. These quiet thoughts settle in like fog, making it harder to see the light. They rarely scream. Instead, they whisper just loud enough to shape how we feel, how we move through the world, how we treat ourselves. We don't usually stop to ask where these beliefs came from. Were they passed down by a parent, a teacher, a culture that rewards perfection? Did they form in childhood when you learned that love sometimes had to be earned? Or maybe they came later, in moments of loss or failure, when shame offered itself as the only explanation. In Buddhist psychology, this internal narrative, these thoughts that define and confine us, are seen as mental formations. They arise, take shape, and eventually pass away, like clouds. But when we grasp them tightly, when we identify with them completely, they solidify. They become a false self. The Buddha never said, "Believe in me." He said, "Come and see." This is an invitation to look clearly not at some distant truth, but at what is arising inside us. The stories we live by, the labels we wear, the burdens we carry that aren't ours to hold. There's a story of a young monk who asked his teacher, "Master, how do I let go of fear?" The teacher replied, "You don't. You welcome it. You bow to it. You invite it to sit beside you, and you listen." At first, the monk was confused, but over time he began to see fear does not vanish through force. It softens through attention. In the same way, the stories we carry do not dissolve because we reject them. They begin to loosen when we meet them with kindness. Try this. The next time you notice a painful belief arising, don't rush to fix it. Don't push it away. Instead, pause. Breathe. Say to yourself, this is the story I'm telling right now. Just that. Not the truth. Not who I am. Just a story. One among many. There is immense power in that small shift. Suddenly, you are no longer the character trapped inside the story. You are the storyteller. And storytellers have the power to change the tale. You might start to ask different questions. Not what's wrong with me, but what happened to me. Not how do I fix myself, but what do I need to heal. These questions don't shut you down, they open you up. They lead inward, not downward. In Buddhism, compassion begins with the self. We often forget this. We try to be kind to others while treating ourselves like enemies. But a heart that is constantly at war with itself cannot offer true peace to the world. There's a phrase in the Metta Sutta the Buddha's teaching on loving kindness. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. At first, this can feel awkward. Self-love, after all, has been twisted into something selfish or indulgent in many cultures. But in truth, it's the root from which all other compassion grows. Try saying it softly to yourself, like a lullaby. May I be free. Not because you've earned it, not because you're perfect, but because you are alive, and that is enough. When we let go of harmful truths we've swallowed, we make room for something more nourishing. A gentler way of being, a softer way of seeing. Sometimes the shift is subtle, a moment of grace, a breath before reaction, a smile that rises when you used to brace yourself. These are signs of healing, not dramatic, but deep. You are not the mistakes you made when you didn't know better. You are not the voice in your head that repeats old scripts. You are not broken. You are becoming. In time, what once felt like heavy truths will feel more like echoes, memories of a time when you needed protection. And now, with presence and courage, you can thank them and let them pass. Like clouds, like stories, like breath, healing often begins in the smallest of silences. The space between one breath and the next. The pause before we speak. The gentle decision not to react. These are the moments we rarely notice, and yet they hold tremendous power, because in them we have a choice to continue down the path of old habits or to soften, to repeat the story of pain or to listen for something deeper. Most of our lives are spent in reaction. We are triggered, provoked, reminded, and we respond out of fear, anger, or shame, often without even realizing it. We are pulled by patterns that live in the body like old songs stuck on repeat. But what if, just once, we didn't follow the script? What if we paused and simply felt? In Buddhism, mindfulness is the practice of being fully present, not to control experience, but to meet it with awareness. It's a way of stepping out of the storm and into the stillness beneath. Not to escape life, but to see it clearly. There's a parable told about a man shot with an arrow. Instead of removing the arrow, he begins asking, "Who shot me? What kind of bow was it? What direction did it come from?" The Buddha uses this image to point out how we often complicate our suffering, adding layers of thought, judgment, and analysis, when what we most need is presence. The arrow is pain, but the extra layers, that's suffering. And mindfulness allows us to stop adding to it. Let's say someone says something unkind to you. The pain is immediate like a sting. But then the mind adds more. They always do this. I don't deserve this. Why does this keep happening to me? Before long, the sting becomes a spiral. But what if you simply noticed the hurt? Felt it in the chest, the throat, the belly? What if you breathed into it without running, without blaming, without explaining? That's not weakness. That's courage. We are taught to be strong by resisting our feelings. But real strength is revealed when we can sit with discomfort and not be shattered by it. In those quiet moments of awareness, we begin to touch the root of things, not just the symptom, but the source. And sometimes what we find is surprising. We may think we're angry when we're actually grieving. We may think we're numb when we're just overwhelmed. We may think we need to fix something outside when the real shift is inside. Healing doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like lying on the floor with no answers, like taking a walk without a goal, like choosing silence over explanation. And that's okay, because healing is not a destination, it's a relationship. A relationship with your own mind, your own heart, your own story. There is a Buddhist term, sati, which means mindfulness, but also remembrance. To be mindful is to remember what truly matters, to remember who you are beneath the noise, to return again and again to this moment just as it is. Here's the truth. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be perfectly healed to be worthy of rest, of joy, of love. You only need to begin noticing. That is enough. You may be carrying a quiet ache that no one sees, a fear you've never said out loud, a dream that still lives in you, fragile and waiting. Let mindfulness be the lamp that gently lights your way. Breathe. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice the sound around you. Come home to now. This moment is not asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to be present. And that is where healing begins, not in answers, but in attention. There's a moment in every journey when we begin to question everything. Not just the pain we carry, but the beliefs beneath it, the roles we've played, the truths we've never dared to examine. For some, it begins with exhaustion, a weariness that runs deeper than sleep. For others, it begins with restlessness, a sense that something about life, about themselves, doesn't quite fit anymore. The outer life continues, but the inner one stirs with quiet questions. Who am I when I stop trying to be enough? What remains when I release the need to be right? Who would I be without the old story? In Buddhism, there is the concept of no self-anatta. It doesn't mean we don't exist, but that the self we cling to, our name, job, opinions, even our traumas, is not fixed. It is fluid, shaped by conditions, constantly changing. And within that truth is an immense freedom. Imagine you've been wearing a heavy coat your whole life. It protected you from the cold. Maybe it even helped you be seen, respected, safe. But now it's summer. The weight is no longer needed. Yet you keep wearing it not because it fits, but because you forgot you could take it off. Letting go of who you thought you had to be is like that. Scary, vulnerable, but also liberating. There's a story about a disciple who asked the Buddha, "What is the secret to your serenity?" The Buddha smiled and replied, "I stopped arguing with reality." This is not passive acceptance. It is radical clarity. It is the ability to say, "This is what is, and I do not need to fight it to be free." Often, we don't realize how much energy we spend resisting what is. We wish the past had been different. We want people to understand us. We want life to unfold on our terms. But in that resistance, we suffer. It's like holding a rope in a tug of war. The tighter we pull, the more it burns. But we rarely consider this. What happens if we let go? There's another parable in Zen about a man running from a tiger. He falls off a cliff and grabs onto a vine. Above him, the tiger waits. Below him, another tiger. Two mice begin nibbling at the vine. And just then, the man notices a strawberry growing nearby. He picks it. He eats it. And he says, "Delicious." This is the wisdom of now. Even in danger, even in uncertainty, even in endings, There is beauty, and we miss it when we're too focused on the tigers. To let go of the self is not to disappear, but to become spacious. To no longer be trapped by the roles and labels that once defined us. To see ourselves not as a noun, but as a verb ever unfolding. This doesn't mean life becomes easy, but it becomes lighter. You might still have bills to pay. You might still feel lonely sometimes. You might still face loss. But now you meet those moments without needing to be someone else, without needing the world to change for you to be at peace. You can cry without being broken. You can feel afraid and still act with courage. You can be uncertain and still move forward. This is the quiet strength that arises when the self loosens its grip. Try sitting in silence and asking gently, "What am I clinging to?" Don't rush the answer. Let it arise in its own time. It might be an identity, the successful one, the caretaker, the strong one, or a story. I was abandoned. I always fail. I must prove myself. Whatever it is, see it clearly. And then, just for a breath, imagine setting it down. What shifts? What softens? Who are you without it? You may notice a new space inside open, still unafraid. That space is your true home. It cannot be hurt. It does not strive. It simply is. From that space you can begin to live not from the need to become, but from the joy of being. There comes a time in every path where letting go is no longer just a spiritual idea, it becomes a necessity. A quiet knowing rises like the tide and whispers, "You can't carry this anymore." Maybe it's an old resentment, a regret that's taken root in your chest, a person who hurt you deeply and never apologized. Or maybe it's something subtler, a small betrayal you did not speak of, a hope you buried so long ago you forgot where it was laid to rest. We often think that letting go means we're giving up, that we're excusing what hurt us, that we're admitting defeat. But the truth is, letting go is not weakness. It is strength softened by grace. There is a teaching in Buddhism. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It hurts us more than anyone else. Anger, when clung to, becomes a fire we sleep beside. It warms no one, but it consumes us slowly. But here's the hard part. Sometimes we're not ready to let go. And that's okay, because letting go is not a single act. It is a process, a rhythm, a sacred unfolding. It begins with noticing, I'm still holding this. And then with compassion, of course I am. This mattered to me. Imagine your heart like a tightly clenched fist. You don't force it open. You warm it with presence. You soften it with breath, and slowly it begins to unfurl. There's a story of two monks crossing a river. As they walk, they meet a woman who cannot cross on her own. One monk carries her across. The other says nothing. Hours later, the second monk bursts out. "You know we are not supposed to touch women, yet you carried her." The first monk replies, "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This is how most of us live, carrying what we should have set down long ago. Conversations, arguments, expectations, and they weigh on us long after the moment has passed. Forgiveness does not mean the past didn't happen. It means it no longer has power over your peace. Sometimes forgiveness is for the other person. But often it's for ourselves, for not knowing better, for trying too hard, for holding on too long. There is deep humility in releasing what no longer serves, not because it wasn't real, but because your soul is ready for more space. Think of a tree in autumn. It does not resent the leaves it lets fall. It knows they've served their purpose. They've fed it, shaded it, beautified it, and now it is time to let them return to the earth. This too is how we grow. So if you're not ready to let go just yet, that's fine. Begin instead by holding it differently, with less judgment, with more curiosity. Ask it, what are you trying to teach me? Pain, when honored, often transforms into wisdom, and when the time comes to set it down, you'll feel it. Like an exhale you didn't realize you were holding, like lightness in the spine, like freedom in the chest. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering differently, not as a wound, but as a witness, not as a chain, but as a chapter. And sometimes the most healing words we can whisper to ourselves are simply, I'm ready. There is a gentle wisdom in endings, not as finality, but as a new beginning wearing a quiet smile. The cycle of holding on and letting go is the rhythm of life itself, an eternal dance that shapes our growth and transformation. When we embrace the truth that healing is not a straight path, but a winding one, we find patience with ourselves and others. We learn that some days will be lighter, others heavier, and that both are necessary. There is a Buddhist teaching about the lotus flower. It rises pure and beautiful from the muddiest waters. It doesn't fight the darkness, but uses it as a foundation for its bloom. Like the lotus, our wounds and struggles can become the soil for wisdom and compassion. The key to healing is not in clinging to a fixed truth, but in welcoming uncertainty with openness. It is in the soft surrender of what we think we know, allowing space for what we have yet to understand. In the silence between thoughts and the spaces between breaths, there is a vastness, a freedom beyond words. As you journey forward, remember that every moment offers a chance to begin anew, to choose kindness over judgment, presence over distraction, love over fear. Let the ancient wisdom of many traditions guide you gently. Let stories, proverbs, and prayers be companions on your path. And above all, let yourself be held by the truth that you are enough right here, right now. Healing is a journey without a final destination, a river flowing endlessly toward the sea. Walk it with courage, with grace, and with the quiet knowing that every step is sacred.